It was just a regular school day, and I think I was in 10th grade. I remember it was around lunchtime, right after the third class. My friends and I always goofed around during lunch. We'd quickly eat for about 5 minutes, then spend the rest of the 20 minutes playing games and having fun. Then, in the middle of lunch, the PA system suddenly blared an emergency announcement. We were told to follow the lockdown procedures. This was pretty scary because usually they would warn us if it was just a drill. Mr. Harrison, the principal, sounded really worried when he announced the lockdown. Some of my friends thought he was acting, but I had a bad feeling about it. Now, I have to admit, the dumbest thing I've ever done happened next. The school's power went off, and for some reason, my friends decided it would be funny to sneak out of the cafeteria through a side door that led upstairs to the main hallway. I joined them, even though I'm not sure why. We wandered around in the dark, and eventually only my friend Andrew and I were left together. The others had split up and gone their own ways. It was so dark that we could barely see in front of us. The only light came from the windows, but it was cloudy outside, so not much light was coming in. Suddenly, we heard 3 loud gunshots, followed by screams. Andrew and I were terrified, so we ran outside as fast as we could. Luckily, we were near the school entrance, and I felt safer outside than inside. But now we were out front, feeling exposed. We were worried that teachers or the police might find us and get angry for leaving during the lockdown. So we ran behind the school and into the woods. To get there, we had to cross a soccer field, but we made it without being seen. Police sirens were getting closer, and we knew they were coming for whoever had fired the shots. Still, we were scared the school or police might also be looking for us because we left without permission. I had friends who got in trouble for missing school before, so I was really anxious about everything. The situation was so serious, and it was normal to be worried. We stayed hidden for a while, trying to calm down and not draw any attention to ourselves. We were also afraid that the police might think we were involved in the shooting somehow. It turned out that the police were looking for the person who had fired the gunshots, not us. They hadn't even realized we were missing from school. We had been lucky, but we kept hiding, not wanting to take any chances. Eventually, though, the police found us while they were checking the school premises. They stopped us, but they didn't detain us for long. They figured out we had nothing to do with the shooting and were just scared students. As it turned out, the person who fired the gunshots was a kid from a different school, only a year younger than me. Thankfully, no one got hurt, but the kid had intended to harm a girl and he didn't succeed. What was strange was how much we looked alike. We were the same height, had the same hair color and style, and were dressed similarly that day. The police quickly realized it was a coincidence after we explained everything. That day taught me a valuable lesson. I realized the importance of following rules, especially during emergencies. It's not worth taking unnecessary risks, and I understood the seriousness of the situation. Despite the chaos and fear, I learned that it's always better to stay safe and trust that the authorities will handle dangerous situations.
I was in my second year of high school. Our school had this routine of doing lockdown drills, which were like practice runs for emergencies. Usually we had 2 drills, but our principal liked to have more, sometimes 3 or 4. I was used to them by now. One day as I walked into my first period history class, my teacher informed us that there would be a lockdown drill that day. I didn't mind these drills because they meant less regular classwork, just around 20 or 25 minutes of practice. About 30 minutes into the class, a short buzzer went off, followed by the principal's voice on the intercom. He explained that the school was going into lockdown, but it was just a practice drill. He mentioned that if it were a real lockdown, the buzzer would sound different, and there would be no announcement. Our teacher instructed us to close the curtains, gather in a corner of the classroom not seen from the outside, turn off the lights, and lock the door. We followed these instructions and waited quietly. After a while, we heard footsteps outside. It was the principal checking if the doors were locked and if everyone was following the drill. The drill ended sooner than I expected. As the day went on, I found myself in my physics class after lunch. I felt the need to use the bathroom, so I slipped out of class. Our school had a basement with a less crowded and more private bathroom, so that's where I headed. A few classrooms were down there, so it didn't seem unusual. I went into one of the stalls, and it was quiet. I was alone, like usual. Suddenly, I heard the lockdown buzzer ringing from the hallway. It went on for a full minute before stopping abruptly. I waited for the principal's voice on the speakers, but it didn't come. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen for a practice drill, which made me start to panic. At first I thought it was part of the drill, maybe a second stage, but then I realized that they would have explained over the intercom if that were the case. That's when it hit me. This might be real. I wasn't safe in the bathroom, there was no lock on the door, so I dashed out, searching for a classroom. In the dim basement with the lights off, it was hard to see. I managed to find a classroom door, but it was locked. Through the glass part of the door, I saw a fellow student hiding in a corner. There was a class inside, but when I knocked and explained that I needed to hide, I got no response. I felt scared and frustrated because protocol said not to let anyone in during a lockdown. I continued searching and found an empty computer lab. I got under a desk at the back and settled there. It was the second time that day I found myself in silence. Only now it was during a real lockdown. Time passed slowly, about 10 minutes, without any updates or announcements. Then I heard footsteps running down the basement stairs. The person's heavy breathing and the sound of their steps were getting closer. They were just outside the room, and I tried to hide even more under the desk. But the computer's light turned on. I must have accidentally touched the mouse. The light wasn't very bright, but it was enough for me to see a silhouette at the doorway. I was terrified, praying they wouldn't come in. After what felt like forever, they turned and ran down the hallway. After a few more minutes, the lockdown was over. The school tried to keep the incident quiet, but the news got out eventually. A fellow student from my grade had taken his father's gun and entered the school through a back door he left open earlier. The police detained him before any harm was done. In his backpack, they found a list of names, which they believed was his intended victims. Surprisingly, my name was fourth on that list. I wondered if he had gotten scared or if he couldn't find anyone to target. Either way, the person I saw in the computer lab was probably him, and I realized I had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation. This experience made me recognize the seriousness of safety procedures and the unpredictability of life. It taught me that even when things seem routine, we should always be prepared and follow the rules. Life can take unexpected turns, and sometimes being cautious can make all the difference.
I was in my junior year of high school, so I was around 17 years old at the time. I live in a coastal town in North Carolina, and the story happened during my first class of the day, which was physical science. We were all busy with our assignments when suddenly the fire alarms started blaring loudly. Everyone thought it was just a regular fire drill, so we calmly left the building, as we usually did during drills. The fresh air outside was a relief. However, things took an unexpected turn. The school staff directed us to move farther away from the building. That's when we found out that there had been a bomb threat called into the school. The atmosphere shifted from confusion to concern. We spent the next 6 hours outside on the football field. Law enforcement officers and their dogs came to search the entire school building. It was a tense wait as we watched them comb through every nook and cranny. The sun was scorching that day because it was springtime in North Carolina. We all got sunburned pretty badly due to the heat. During our long wait, they brought us lunch, but it was frozen ham and cheese sandwiches. They were so frozen that it felt like they could chip a tooth. It was a bit funny amidst the tension trying to eat sandwiches that were as hard as rocks. The hours dragged on, and we grew increasingly anxious. Eventually, we got the all-clear signal to re-enter the building, and it happened shortly before the regular dismissal time. Even though the situation wasn't the kind you see in movies, it was still a scary experience. When you think about the possibility of a bomb being inside your school, it's hard not to feel fear and worry for everyone's safety. The memory of that day still gives me chills. I hope that none of you or your future children have to go through such a stressful situation. Safety is so important, and we should all look out for one another, so please stay safe out there. Life can throw unexpected challenges our way, but by looking out for each other and following safety procedures, we can navigate through them and come out stronger.